Okay. Your great wealth has brought you houses, cars, yachts, even bogus degrees. But even the poorest in the nation enjoy riches you could only dream of, namely happiness and affection. What is it that makes you, in the words of Sue Pollard, unlovable?
I think wealth brings with it a certain arrogance.
Do you think you've given the women in your life enough credit?
Well, they've had as much credit as a platinum card limit provides. It's assurance and respect I fail to give them.
Your biographer says you are allergic to love.
It's a bit like convulsing in a restaurant. It's difficult for certain to say whether it's the peanuts or the company. I remember it happened in Claridge's once, just as the sweets trolley arrived. My fall was broken by a Dutch apple cake, and Torville was very good about it. But that was before her Olympic success. It went to her head, regrettably.
So you wouldn't use the terms, as others have, such as ill-advised and inappropriate, to describe your treatment of women?
Sometimes I've had to take tablets after meeting a woman, so in that sense it's comparable to analogy. Loss of appetite, a dull, throbbing pain in the base of my spine. When I met Jane Fonda, I came up with hives for a week, which was a shame because she was a beautiful woman.
You've discussed the symptoms. Have you ever given a moment's thought to the cure?
Of course. I've tried conducting relationships through an interpreter. I say what I mean, and he couches it in terms less distressing to the lady in question.
And how does that work towards the end of an evening?
Well, it's pro rata, so it hasn't been an issue. Occasionally he'll fax me a timesheet.
But doesn't that hamper intimate affairs?
I found that's when it works best.
Have you ever thought it might be easier to start a relationship with the interpreter?
I did think that once, but we went to the Norfolk Broads, but he came back the next day.
What went wrong?
Spoiler, Bruce.
What do you rank as your least disastrous relationship?
I met a charming girl on a train once.
And what was her name?
I never found out her name. I asked the steward if he had her ticket stub, but he hadn't.
Do you think she was the one?
Well, I gave him quite a detailed description.
I was out with Les Dennis the other day, and he recounted a time when a girlfriend of yours returned from your flat saying you had asparagus.
It was asparagus, served in melted butter with a mint garnish. Les is always getting himself confused over details, and that's why he's never paid tax. Once he forgot the clocks went back and turned up late for Whose Line Is It Anyway?
And what happened?
Well, fortunately, Dennis Thatcher was in the audience and filled in. Les ended up deputising for Michael Fish on the weather. He said he hated a wasted journey.
What happened to Fish?
Well, of course, he hates a fruitless trip too, so ended up commentating on Arsenal versus Leeds.
And how did that go down with Mopson?
He said there was a period of high pressure culminating in a late deluge, so it was all the same stuff, just describing a different event. He didn't like the chair. Fish insists on standing, always has. It's become his calling card. Craven, on the other hand, can't bear to stand.
Your father was a joiner.
He was. Could never resist joining something. I can remember him telling me he tried to join the Scouts but was too young, so he joined the library instead. But he attended 2 sessions and neither involved tying knots, so he left.
And later in life he joined the British Nationalist Party. How do you react to a thing like that?
He wasn't a political man, my father. He never ran a manifesto or wrote to his GP or denied himself food by sitting on his roof. What he did enjoy was going to the local park and throwing stones at the ducks.
Did he resent British jobs going to foreign workers?
He lost his job to a swan. I'm not sure if it was local or not. He was meant to keep children out of the Lido at weekends, but every now and then one would get past him while he dozed. The swan never dozed.
How did he take it?
Well, it was a wake-up call for him. You never look at a wading bird and think he could take your job. Sad thing is that later in life a curlew replaced him as curator of the V&A.
The issue of your forebears was the subject of your last television appearance. Other than a brief glimpse during a sweeping crowd shot at the boat race, it's the only time you have appeared on the box in a decade.
Family history has always been a great source of comfort to me. Whatever vitriolic scorn the media pour on you, they can't scrub out names on your family tree with lead pencils. Family is like an immovable granite boulder in a fast-flowing stream. The stream may prize a barnacle away, but the granite remains, and if anything, gets smoother. Sometimes I see my family several times after every meal, and others I may not see them in a decade. But I had to get involved recently, for example, when Madonna tried to adopt one of my nieces. But I'm pleased to say she's now looking elsewhere. The Algarve, I believe.
And it was in that show that you first learned that your maternal grandfather was a Berber. How did you discover his North African roots? How did a proud tribal leader end up sailing to Europe, donning an apron, and cutting hair? It was quite a tale.
Barber, I think you'll find, Peter. He did cut hair, but he never sailed to Europe. He did sail from Europe a few times, though, to buy scissors.
Nevertheless, he was a great influence on you. Didn't he even go to lengths of including you in his will?
But he never did. I was mentioned in his last testament several times, but was completely missing from his will.
And this has made you alter your own will,
Well, that's right, I took him out of my will.
as an act of revenge.
Not revenge, no, it's more remorse. I like to think I visited when I could, and in return he leaves his entire fortune to a charity he barely knew.
Cleft palates in Africa.
I've learnt to resent his decision, but he got a clinic named after him, so for him it was money well spent.
A clinic you have recently put up for sale.
As trustee of the clinic, I felt I had a moral obligation to sell it to an adjoining restaurant.
For money.
Money, yes, but also pleasure.
But where will the patients go?
Well, they'll go to school where they should have been all along. You shouldn't deny children education just because they suffer ill health. If they're feeling hungry, they can come back, but they'll have to make a reservation if it's a weekend.
According to yesterday's Daily Mail newspaper, you're suffering from an illness yourself, one which you will never recover from.
It's called old age. It isn't a scientific term. We all die at some point, you know. I just hope I'm still here for the boat race because my grandson sculls for Cambridge.
It's not old age though, is it, Carrington? The Daily Mail says that you have cancer of the earlobe.
The earlobe, you say? Well, I must admit I did notice some inflammation, but the frozen peas have helped tremendously. I'd rather not talk about my health, if that's all right. I've done enough in my life to fill the programme without needing to discuss my death. I'm in the grey area in between, and I'd be very grateful if you could just pass the cod liver oil.
Capsules or the Boston?
Both. You're too kind.